Have you ever loved someone so deeply that every day, whether amidst gunfire or in the lonely darkness of the battlefield, you still couldn't stop thinking about them and had to write it down? Every day, not a single day missed. Even if no one ever read it, even if no one ever replied. And can you imagine that a man actually did just that, wrote a letter every single day to the woman he loved for over a year? Never sent them, never told anyone, just quietly wrote, then tucked them away. Every word, every stroke of ink, as if it were the only way to keep his heart from breaking. What makes this story even more extraordinary is that she had no idea. Throughout her entire life, that woman never knew there was a box. A secret hidden deep in a small room where a silent love had been kept for nearly half a century, and that secret was only revealed on the day of his funeral. Why? What would make a man choose to hide his feelings all the way to his final breath? And more importantly, if you were the one to receive those letters, how would you feel? This story is not a romance novel imagined by some author. It's not in a book, nor was it written to be a bestseller. It's a piece of real memory, picked up from fragments of time, from the accounts of those who witnessed it, from tears that hadn't yet dried. James Whitmore, then only 22, was a young American man living in the town of Franklin, Tennessee, a peaceful town where everyone knew each other's name, where every day began with the church bell and ended with warm yellow lights from the roadside diners. In 1967, the Vietnam War was still raging, and James, like thousands of other young American men, was drafted. On the last day before deployment, he said goodbye to his girlfriend Eleanor Grant at the town's old train station. Eleanor, with shoulder-length blonde hair and her familiar blue dress, stood silently by the tracks. The wind blew a few strands of her hair across her lips and her eyes. Oh, those eyes almost made James take back his decision to go. "Just come back. I don't need anything else," Eleanor said, holding back a sob, her trembling hands clutching his. James nodded, but he didn't make any promises. Because how can you promise anything when death is only a bullet away? That's how they parted. No engagement ring, no vow of forever. Just a tight hug and a whispered goodbye swallowed by the train's whistle. And then, amidst the long days on the front lines, in damp jungles thick with death and despair, James began to write. The first letters were filled with longing. "Do you still walk down Magnolia Street? The blossoms must be beautiful this year." Or, "Does your mother still bake apple pies on Sundays? I miss that smell." He wrote on any scrap of paper he could find, napkins, box flaps, even the backs of maps. Each letter was dated, carefully folded, and placed inside an old tin box he carried like a treasure. None of his fellow soldiers knew, and Eleanor, the one he called the only light in this chaotic storm, had no idea either. Strange, isn't it? Why not send the letters? Why write them just to keep them? Maybe James feared they'd be lost, or somehow he didn't want to drag Eleanor into the shadow of war, where every word could become a farewell. Or maybe, just maybe, he knew he wouldn't survive to read her reply. But what truly breaks the heart isn't how many letters he wrote, or the romantic words of a young man. It's the unconditional patience, writing with no reply, writing with no hope, writing as if it were the only thing that kept him sane among the blood and the dead. Once, he wrote, "It's pouring today. I just lost my best friend, but when I think of you, I can still breathe, and that's enough." When the war ended, James came home. But yes, you guessed it, he didn't go to find Eleanor. He didn't write, didn't call, didn't show up. Eleanor, believing James had died, moved on with her life. She married, had children, then divorced after many unhappy years. James lived quietly in a small wooden house near the northern woods of town. No family, no wife, no children, just a wooden box, locked and hidden under the bed. A private world. A box of memories. The biggest question is why? Why not give her the letters while he was alive? Why choose silence that lasted half a century? We'll find out. But not yet. Because what keeps you listening until the very last second of this story isn't just the love, it's the secret. A secret that not only changed Eleanor's life when revealed, but also made millions on social media weep when they heard it. But wait, have you ever thought, if you were Eleanor. And one day, a stranger came to your door, handed you a box containing 365 love letters, all written just for you, all handwritten from the battlefield. Over the course of more than a year, would you open it, or would you be too afraid to read? And if you were James, living alone your whole life, quietly carrying that love within you, asking for nothing in return, seeking no closure, just wanting the one you love to be happy, would you do it? The story doesn't end here. That box, in the end, was opened, and what Eleanor read inside completely changed the way she saw her life, her memories, and what people often call a love that slipped away. But to know what that was, you'll have to stay with me until the end of this story. Franklin, Tennessee, a place where time seems to pass more slowly than in the rest of the world. Summer mornings here often begin with the crowing of roosters mixed with the scent of early coffee. People know each other's names. Each house has a small porch with a rocking chair and wind chimes that tinkle in the breeze. A place where not much unexpected ever happens, except for that love story buried nearly 50 years ago. At the start of this story, we met James Whitmore, a young soldier who left his hometown for war, leaving behind a love with Eleanor Grant. But to understand why he chose to write 365 letters and never send them, why he lived in silence after returning, and why Eleanor never knew, we must go deeper into who these two people really were. James Whitmore, the man who wrote letters he never sent. James was the kind of person every small town has. Calm, a man of few words, and always respectful of those around him. His parents owned a small auto repair shop on the corner of Jackson Street, and from a young age he was more familiar with the smell of motor oil than the pages of books. But don't let the tough exterior fool you. Inside James was a deeply emotional world few ever reached. Back in high school, James once won second place in a statewide writing competition. His essay about the empty chair at the dinner table made the judges cry, but he never pursued writing. He didn't think someone like him, born in this dusty little town, could ever make a life with words. Then the war broke out. The country called his name, and James went. No one, not even James, thought that those months in the jungles of Southeast Asia would bring him back to the written word. But strangely, in the moments when he felt he might die, amidst blood and mud, it was the memory of Eleanor and writing down his feelings for her that became the only thing keeping him alive. He didn't write to be read. He wrote to stay sane, to hold on to a piece of his humanity. He wrote as if he stopped, he would disappear. Eleanor Grant, the woman who never knew how deeply she was loved. Eleanor was born into a family of educators. Her mother taught English literature at Franklin High School, and her father was the principal. They always hoped Eleanor would go into teaching, marry a kind man, have a few children, and live a normal life like most women in town. But Eleanor thought differently. Ever since she was little, she'd been in love with jazz songs on the radio and preferred writing in her diary over copying lecture notes. She once dreamed of going to New York, studying art, traveling across America with a camera and a notebook. She once told James, as they sat under the oak tree by the lake, "I don't want to live a life like my mother's. I want to write things no one's ever written." And it was those deep conversations where James listened without interrupting, where Eleanor could be her true self, that made them fall in love. They once loved like the world couldn't separate them. But war is a selfish man. It always wants to steal away the most beautiful things. Two people, two fates, one unspoken distance. When James boarded the train, Eleanor stood for a long time in the parking lot of Franklin Station, clutching a photo they'd taken together at the town fair. A photo she kept until the very end of her life. During the years James was at war, Eleanor never received a single letter, not a word, not a message. She waited, then despaired, then kept on living, because life waits for no one. And James, he still wrote every day. The first letter described the long trip from San Francisco to Manila, then on to the training camp in Saigon. The 17th letter said, "I heard cicadas last night." Just like in Franklin. Do you still remember that summer? By the 50th letter, he had already lost 2 comrades. But he kept writing. In the 112th letter, he described a dream where Eleanor waited for him at the bus stop. In the 200th, he didn't write much, just drew a small flower and the words. Sometimes love needs no words. Each letter was a small carving on his heart, and also a piece in a silent symphony that no one ever heard. Why didn't he come back? One of the most haunting questions is, why didn't James go find Eleanor when he returned? There are many theories. Some believe he suffered psychological trauma after the war, PTSD, the condition that haunted thousands of American veterans. Others think he knew Eleanor had married and didn't want to disturb her happiness. But some, like the manager at the nursing home, where Eleanor spent her final years, believed James never stopped loving her, but he thought he no longer deserved to. James himself once wrote in a letter with no date, "If you are living a peaceful life, then let me be the keeper of our memories. No disturbance, no intrusion. Just a silent guard outside your door." There is something deeply sorrowful in that sentence. Don't you think? A love that chooses not to exist, just so the other person can live fully. A subtle connection between past and present. When the letters were discovered after James's funeral, the first thing people asked was not, "Who is he?" but "Why keep this hidden until the very end?" No one could fully explain it. Because love doesn't always need to be explained. Some people love not to be loved back, but simply to let it exist like a poem no one reads, but is still written because it must be. And in each letter James left behind, people saw not only his love for Eleanor, but also the pain of a generation that had to love during war. Love in silence, love without daring to hope. The question remains unanswered. What do you think of James? Was he a cowardly man, or someone who loved so patiently that he sacrificed his entire life just so the one he loved wouldn't have to bear any more pain? And Eleanor, did she ever feel regret? When she opened those old letters, did her hands tremble? Did she ever think, "If only I had known sooner"? There are things that, once opened, will forever change the person holding them. That old tin box placed in a brown paper bag, delivered to the nursing home in Franklin on a March afternoon, did just that to Eleanor Grant. The delivery man didn't know what he had just handed over. The nurse on duty had no idea what it was. Only Eleanor. When she saw the name James Whitmore on the small envelope stuck to the outside, understood vaguely, but with a shiver that a part of her past she thought was long buried, was about to come alive again. To Eleanor, "If you still remember me," just 8 handwritten words on the lid of the box. That handwriting she could never forget. Her hands trembled as she opened it, and like a miracle of time, hundreds of letters bundled into small stacks with fabric ribbons appeared one by one. The envelopes had yellowed. The paper corners curled slightly from moisture, and some still had tiny grains of sand stuck to them. Could they have been grains from Vietnam? Eleanor picked up the first letter. Her hands shook so much she had to use both to keep the paper from falling. The letter was dated July 5th, 1967. Just one day after James had left. "My love, I've never been good at saying goodbye, maybe because I always believed we'd meet again. But today, as I sit on the train and see you grow smaller through the smoke, I suddenly thought, what if that was the last time? Then I can't let you not know that I love you so much, that every breath I take from this moment on is for you." Eleanor bowed her head, clutching the letter to her chest. She didn't cry aloud, she just went silent, as if every sound in the world had vanished. She once thought of herself as a strong woman. She had survived war, loss, separation, divorce, even the death of a child. But never had she prepared herself for facing a love so silent it was cruel that had existed for her all those years. Each letter, a slice of memory. Eleanor began reading one letter at a time, each day. Sometimes she read them as the sunlight streamed through the nursing home window, golden like an old summer afternoon. Sometimes she turned on her bedside lamp at 2 a.m. just to read one more. And there were days she couldn't read at all, because the words hurt too much. Letter number 23. James wrote about his first encounter with falling bombs. Letter number 56. He wrote about a dream of the two of them drinking tea on a porch in the year 2020. With silver hair and wrinkled smiles, he had imagined a future. Even if he didn't know if he'd lived to see it. Letter 101 was a poem. Letter 145 came with a rough sketch of the dress Eleanor had worn to the autumn festival. And letter 200, today I got news. I'll be pulled from the front lines in the next few months. Maybe I'll live, maybe I'll come home, but I don't know if I'll have the courage to find you. You deserve a peaceful life, and I'm not sure if I'm still the man you once loved. Eleanor stopped there. That sentence made her heart ache. Is that what James had thought? While she, all those years, had believed he was dead, and so, when she married, it was because she thought her first love had been lost forever. Parallel lives. How many steps apart were they? There's something that makes you shiver. Eleanor and James, for nearly 50 years after the war, lived no more than 5 miles apart. Still in the town of Franklin, shopping at the same stores, maybe filling gas at the same station, perhaps even walking past each other on the street. But not once did they meet again. Eleanor had once heard rumors that James lived alone on the edge of town, but she wasn't sure that was her James. And James, he didn't dare look for her, didn't want to disturb the life he imagined she had. They both lived a life in a silence that bordered on haunting. Have you ever thought, if only once they had turned around, if only once she had walked into their old cafe at the right time, if only once he had sent just one letter, would everything have been different? The final letter, a farewell never sent. Inside the box, there was one special letter, the final one, placed separately in a pale red envelope, not tied with the others. It read, "Open last." Eleanor took 3 days to gather the courage to open it. She placed her hand on the envelope, then pulled it back, read a few older letters again, then looked back at the red one, as if she knew once she read it, the story would be complete. And finally, she opened it. "My Eleanor, if you're holding this letter, it means I'm gone. Maybe you've lived a happy life, and I hope you have. I'm sorry I never showed up, not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid that I might disrupt the life you were building. But you need to know this, I never stopped loving you, and every letter in this box is a part of my heart, not meant to be kept, just meant to be touched once. James." Eleanor folded the letter and held it to her chest. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply closed her eyes and whispered, "I've loved you my whole life. I just didn't know it." The words never spoken, and an ending with no period. James and Eleanor's story didn't end with a tearful reunion. There's no photo of 2 elderly people holding hands on a bench. No smile after tears, but it's real, and it's beautiful in its own way. Because love doesn't always need to be returned. Some loves are meant just to exist. Some memories are meant to be kept in silence. And some letters are meant to be written, never sent. What do you think? If it were you, would you have the courage to write hundreds of letters without ever expecting a reply? And if one day someone placed an old box in your hands, filled with proof of a love that quietly lasted half a century, would you be brave enough to open it? The story isn't over, because in the next part, Eleanor decided to do something unexpected with those letters, something that made thousands of people hear James's name and cry with emotion. Can you guess what she did? After reading all 365 of James's letters, each one like a heartbeat once pounding for her, each word like a bell echoing from the battlefield and the past, she never looked at life the same way again. Every morning she woke up. The sunlight through the curtains felt different. It was no longer just another day in a nursing home. It was a new day given to remember, to live, and to do something meaningful with those letters. She couldn't keep them to herself. She couldn't let that love, those whispers, those forgotten dreams, die again in silence. But what would she do? And how? James left no instructions, no will, no final request, just a heart, written out in words, and a woman quietly holding it, a risky decision. Full of heart, Eleanor made a choice. She would share the letters with the world. Not because she wanted attention. She was old enough to know that fame is fleeting, not to mourn a lost love. She had already made peace with her regrets. She did it because she believed a love like this needed to be told. For the young, confused between love and fear. For the old, who had lost something precious. For those who believed letter writing was outdated. and quiet devotion a weakness. James didn't write just for me, she said. He wrote for everyone who needs to know that love sometimes doesn't need to be proven with presents. It just needs to stay loyal to memory. The tin box and the small exhibition room. With help from her granddaughter, a high school teacher of literature and history, Eleanor began to digitize each letter. Every piece was carefully scanned, the contrast adjusted so the handwriting could be read more easily. The faded black ink, sometimes blurred by sweat or old tears, was now preserved digitally. They created a small website called 365 Letters to One Soul, and just 1 week after being shared on social media, everything exploded. I cried when I read letter number 59. It felt like my father's last goodbye before he passed. Letter 134 reminded me of my late wife. I never wrote anything for her. Now I wish I had. My son is in the military. I'm going to print these letters and send them to him, so he knows that love can survive even through war. The media got involved. A local newspaper invited Eleanor for an interview. Then came a national radio station, then an evening television show. Not long after, schools started including excerpts from James's letters in literature and civics classes. They called it a living document of love in wartime. A documentary filmmaker from New York reached out. A publisher sent a proposal, but Eleanor chose just one thing: to open a small room in the town library to exhibit all 365 letters. The opening day, and the unexpected moment. On the day that little library room opened its doors, Franklin was drizzling with rain. Eleanor didn't expect so many people to come. The whole town seemed to show up. Some brought flowers, some brought copies of their favorite letter. Some veterans came in old uniforms, just to read the words of a man who had once lived through what they had. And then, as people were lining up to enter the room, a thin, silver-haired man slowly walked up to Eleanor. His hands trembled as he held a wooden box. His face flushed. His eyes welled up. "Excuse me, are you Eleanor Grant?" She nodded. I was James's last surviving comrade. "My name is Patrick." An unexpected truth and a long-lost final message. Patrick sat next to her the entire afternoon. He said he and James had served in the same unit in central Vietnam, that he had watched James write those letters every night by the light of a small flashlight, that they once argued because Patrick had begged James to send at least a few letters or find a way to reach out. "He just shook his head," Patrick said, "and told me something I've never forgotten. I don't need her to read them. I just need to know that I still love her." Patrick explained that after the war, they lost contact. Only recently, when he heard of James's passing and saw the letters online, did he search through his old belongings and found an unopened letter that James had once asked him to keep, with a note: "Give this to Eleanor only if one day she truly wants to know why I never came back." Eleanor opened the letter with trembling hands. "Eleanor, I once thought I'd have the courage to face you. But then I realized my silence was the only way to let you live in peace. I saw you from afar, a few times, in the years after the war. I knew you had a husband, children, and I turned away. Not because I didn't love you, but because true love doesn't step back into someone's life once they've chosen a different path. And yet, I kept writing, because you were the melody I couldn't stop playing in my heart. I'm sorry, and thank you for once existing in my life." Eleanor leaned into Patrick. She didn't cry. She simply said, "I forgive him, and I forgive myself for not knowing." The final love, and the life that followed. After that day, Eleanor became known not because she was a woman once deeply loved, but because she had turned pain into a gift for the world. The website, 365 Letters to One Soul, received millions of visits from all over the world. French, Japanese, and Spanish translations began appearing. Couples printed the letters to read at their weddings. Schools held workshops titled, "Write Like James, Love Through Words." And amidst all that spread and recognition, Eleanor kept one thing to herself. A single letter she never published, the only one she carried with her every day. She called it the letter that never needed a reply. No one knew what it said. And perhaps that didn't matter. The love story of James and Eleanor didn't end with a hand held at life's end. It ended with something even more important, A whisper that was finally heard even if it came too late. And you, what about you? If you were James, would you write without ever expecting a reply? If you were Eleanor, would you forgive? If you're the one hearing this story, is there someone you love but have never dared to tell? Maybe you should write, not to send, but to keep. The story has ended, but does love ever truly end? We've just journeyed through the life of a man who loved in silence for a lifetime, a woman who only realized she had been loved after that man was gone, a box filled with 365 letters never sent, and a life where words left unspoken left a deeper mark than any words ever could. By the time you're hearing this, perhaps you too are sitting in silence like I am, not because their love story was overly romantic like in the movies, but because it was real. Because it could be you, it could be me, it could be anyone who has ever loved and dared not speak. Anyone who ever chose silence over confession, who once wrote but tore it up, who once held someone in their heart and never let them know. So the question is, what are you holding inside? And for whom? What would happen if you said it? We live in a time when everything moves fast. Messages are sent in an instant. Video calls are just one tap away. But strangely, in this world, we're more afraid than ever to speak our true feelings. We're afraid of rejection, afraid of disrupting something that's just fine, afraid of losing our image, and so we stay silent, just like James. But does silence bring peace? James wrote for nearly 2 years, 365 days, as steady as a heartbeat, and then lived 50 years alone. Eleanor lived a life that looked whole on paper, but always carried a quiet emptiness inside her she couldn't name until the box arrived. If James had been braver, if Eleanor had known sooner, would things have been different? Maybe, but maybe not. Because true love doesn't always need a reply. The real question is, while we still have the chance, should we remain silent? The letter you've never written. Is there someone you once wanted to say sorry to, but never did? Someone you once loved but never told? Someone you hurt but couldn't bring yourself to apologize to? Do you have a letter in your heart that you've never written? I'm not asking to reopen old wounds. I'm asking so you remember. There's still time. There's still a chance. Someone might still be waiting to hear that from you. You don't have to write 365 letters like James. Just one. One letter, one call, one honest message. Maybe just that is enough to make the difference between a life of missed chances and a life that was truly heard. Eleanor chose forgiveness. What about you? Remember, Eleanor wasn't angry when she learned the truth. She didn't resent James for not sending the letters, for not coming back after the war, for not knocking on her door just to say, "I still love you." Instead, she opened each letter, she read, she smiled, she cried, and in the end, she forgave. She forgave James. She forgave herself. And she forgave the years that had slipped away. Can you do the same? Can you forgive someone? Or forgive yourself for not speaking, not holding on, not stepping forward? Don't answer me now. Just think about it. Let that question stay in your heart for more than just a day. What kind of life do you choose to live? Inside each of us, there is a James hiding emotions, and there's also an Eleanor living without knowing they were once deeply loved. Who are you right now? If you're quietly in love with someone, maybe today is the day to write your first letter. If you're holding on to words you've never dared to say, maybe today is the moment to speak. If you've ever missed out on something, remember, the story of James and Eleanor isn't meant to make you sad. It's meant to awaken you. None of us knows how much time we have. None of us knows who will leave first. But we do know one thing. When you love, don't stay silent. A message for you, the one listening to this story. I don't know where you're sitting right now, in your living room, on a bus, or at the edge of your bed late at night. But if you've listened to this story all the way to the end, then maybe you too are carrying an untold story inside. Would you like to share it? Tell me if you're ready. Leave a comment beneath the video. Write about someone you once loved. Write about something you've kept in your heart. Write about a letter you wish you had written, or simply write, "I still love them." Because this story isn't just James and Eleanor's, it's yours, too. It belongs to all of us, those with imperfect hearts. living in a noisy world, quietly hoping that someone understands, that someone is listening, and sometimes, just like James. You don't need to be loved back to love, you just need the courage to love even in silence. I'll leave a blank space here for you to fill with your own story. What would you write? If this were the last letter you could ever write, who would you speak to? If tomorrow they were gone, what would you do? If you knew the one you love never knew it. Love isn't always about beginnings. Sometimes, love is about returning. It's a door that opens after decades. It's a tin box discovered after a funeral. Or it's a word you never said. If you're still here, listening to the final words of this story, then your heart has felt something. Maybe you've shed a tear. Maybe you went quiet. Or maybe you just sat there, holding your hands tight. Because in each of James's letters to Eleanor, you saw a part of yourself. We all carry untold stories. And sometimes, we don't need someone to listen to everything. We just need someone to ask, are you holding something in your heart? I'm not beside you now. I don't know if you're in a dark room or on a train rushing through a noisy city, but I know one thing. You're feeling something. Maybe it's regret. Maybe it's hope. Maybe it's a flicker of missing someone no longer here. Or maybe, just maybe, you're thinking about someone you've never dared to name aloud. If you are the one who hides your feelings, are you quietly in love with someone? Someone who makes you smile every time they cross your mind, but you've never told them. Someone you've been watching from afar, never once reaching out. Someone whom, on quiet nights, you wish you could say to, I miss you. What are you afraid of? Afraid they won't feel the same. Afraid you'll ruin something that's just okay, or afraid they've already moved on. James was once afraid too. He chose silence. Chose to live a quiet life, writing words he never sent. And only when it was too late did the truth finally surface. But you're different. You still have time. So will you keep holding it all in? Or will you write one line, make one phone call, let one heart out there know you have not been forgotten? If you're someone who once missed a chance, have you ever lost someone before you could say you were sorry? Had someone you wanted to confess your feelings to, but they chose someone else? Had a chance to love, to hold on, to forgive, but you stayed silent? I know, the what-ifs are the heaviest burdens we carry. But Eleanor taught us something. Forgiveness may come late, but it is never meaningless. She forgave James, the man who made her believe she had been forgotten. She also forgave herself for living a whole life, never knowing that love had always been there, so close. Can you do the same? Can you forgive someone, even if they're no longer here to hear it? Or at the very least, can you write one line for them not to send, but to remind yourself, I've chosen to let go, so I can live lighter? If you're someone waiting for something, are you waiting for someone else to speak first? Do you think, if they love me, they'll come to me? But what if they're thinking the exact same thing? James once wrote, I don't need you to read it. I just need to know. I still love you. Do you have the courage to say what you feel without needing a reply? Love doesn't always arrive from both sides at the same time. But that doesn't make it any less real. And sometimes, the one who speaks first is the one who loves deeper. Have you ever written a letter? Not an email. Not a message. A real letter. Handwritten, on paper, something that can be held. That can be touched. That might still carry the scent of ink blurred by tears. Did you know some people go their whole lives receiving only one honest letter, and they keep it like a treasure? James wrote 365 letters. No one read them, but in the end, just one of them was enough to make Eleanor break down and say, I've loved you my whole life. I just didn't know. So what are you waiting for? Who is the person you want to write a letter like that to? Don't let your love become something that never existed. When James died, he left behind no fortune, no family, no property, only a wooden box and 365 echoes of a quiet love. And it was that, not fame, not wealth, that moved millions, that made the small town of Franklin. Never forget his name. Don't stay silent. You've followed this story from the very first letter to the very last, from words whispered but never spoken, to the quiet moments that made you reflect on your own heart. And now, as the video reaches its final minute, you haven't clicked away, you haven't scrolled, you haven't let go of this story. Why? Could it be that a part of you is quietly speaking up? The effect of things left unsaid. The human mind can't bear unfinished endings. That's why we keep thinking about people from the past. Why we're haunted by an unsent message. Why we sometimes dream about someone we thought we had forgotten. James wrote for nearly 2 years. Eleanor lived almost 50 years, never knowing she was loved. And you, the one listening to this story, might also be holding a door in your heart that was never closed. A door called what was never said. You see, it's the things left unsaid that linger the longest. They don't disappear, they simply sleep, waiting for a moment like this very video, to wake up and whisper in your ear, it's not too late. You can still say it. The mirror effect. When you see yourself in the story, have you noticed? From the beginning until now, you haven't just been listening to James and Eleanor's story. You've been seeing yourself. This is a psychological phenomenon called the mirror effect. When you can't look away from a story, not because it's unfamiliar, but because it's too familiar. Maybe you've never been on a battlefield. But you've waited, you've written, then deleted. You've thought of someone every day, but never told them. James's story isn't just a love story, it's a mirror. And you, right now, are the one standing in front of it. And you have 2 choices. Turn away or look deeper. The fear of lost possibilities. What if you're missing something? 2. James never sent the letters and lived out his life alone. Eleanor never knew the truth until it was too late. They missed something that could have become a beautiful ending. And now that you've seen the cost of that silence, your mind won't stop asking, what if I'm missing something too? That's a powerful psychological response called loss aversion. The fear of losing something that might still be within reach. It won't let you rest, and so you won't be able to walk away without doing something, without writing, without asking, without leaving just one line behind. The first stone effect. You are the one who speaks first. In a quiet room, who will be the first to speak? In a long line of people waiting, who will be the one to step forward? You are at that moment now, and if you leave just one comment, just one honest line, you'll create a psychological effect called the first mover impact. What does it mean? It means you will be the first to speak. And after you, hundreds more will find the courage to speak too. You don't have to name anyone. You only need to write. I once loved someone but never said it. I still keep a letter I never sent. I understand what Eleanor felt. Or just 3 words, I still remember. Why should you do it right now? Because if you leave this video without doing anything, chances are you'll fall into the emotional delay trap. You'll tell yourself you'll write tomorrow, then the next day, then you'll forget. And one day, when a song plays again, or when you scroll past an old photo, all these feelings will return like a wave. And you'll regret not doing something when you could, but you're still here. And now is the time. No one is waiting for you to write perfectly. They're just hoping you'll write truthfully. No one will laugh at you for leaving a message from the heart. No one will judge you if you write. I loved someone silently for 5 years. I still hope they read this one day, because we're all holding on to something. And sometimes, the first brave voice can save an entire community from silence. You can begin like this. I don't know why this video made me cry. Maybe because I was once like James. I still have a letter I wrote to my ex. I never sent it. But this story made me think again. If you're reading this, and you once loved someone but never said it, write it. You're not alone. You'll never know who might read your words. Just imagine, if someone who once loved you too, someone who also stayed silent, happens to see this video and sees your comment. Will their hearts stir? Will they realize, after all these years, that love is still there? Could a meeting, a phone call, a letter be returned, all because you wrote a few words beneath a video? You'll never know until you write. Let this video be more than just a story. Let it be a beginning. Let the comment section become a space filled with words that were never spoken. Let it be a healing place, where once silent hearts now speak together. You may be an ordinary person, but what you share might touch thousands of hearts, just like James once wrote. Without expecting anyone to reply, there are words of love that, if left unsaid, will never reach where they need to go. There are people that, if we don't hold on to them in time, will remain only in memory. There are chances that if we don't step forward with courage, we'll vanish, as if they never existed. The story of James and Eleanor is not just a tragic love story. It's a lesson about silence, about memory, and about courage. Love, if never spoken, is just an echo inside the one who holds it. You don't have to wait until it's too late. You don't need 365 handwritten letters. You don't need a box to be opened after a funeral. Sometimes, all it takes is a word, a message, an honest look. A letter never sent, finally written today. Speak, write, send, forgive. If you must, hold on, if there's still time, and love if your heart is still gentle enough to do so. If someone came to your mind while hearing this story, leave a comment. I thought of someone. I know that feeling. I won't let the silence stretch any longer. Or write your truest, most honest emotion, because who knows, someone might be reading, waiting, quietly hoping for a sign from you. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to follow the channel. Each story here isn't just for listening. It's a place where you might just find a part of yourself. And if you know someone who should hear this story, share the video with them. Who knows, you might be giving two hearts a second chance to find each other. Thank you for listening until the very last second. And remember, what's left unsaid can still be heard. All it takes is for you to speak. See you in the next video, where another story might just be yours.